Greetings, once and all, one and all, Jesus, once and all. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. It is time for the feedback loop. It's a relatively light morning. As I'm certain each and every one of you is somewhat focused somewhere else this morning, would be completely acceptable considering the pandemic that we're all experiencing. But the great news is, if you find yourself in a situation where you got to be shut in, there's at least an opportunity to push forward in a productive manner and get the most getting the most out of this by growing and elevating your design skills along the way. Got a couple things we want to look at this morning. Tedral, it looks like you've made some updates to your BusyBus case study, and Eve has also submitted some work for her form design chapter exercise. So I want to take a look at both of those, and I may have to momentarily take breaks. I am experiencing a little bit of discomfort from a dental procedure, so I will probably re-edit this a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get this started. And we're going to start with Eve's form design page. And I'm going to go ahead and hide my controls for Figma. With this project, there are a number of fields that have been offered to the student, and the object of this is to simply remove the unnecessary fields or remake this form into a better experience for the end user. And as we go down, we see that Eve has in fact spaced this out. Eve has, in fact, spaced this out. The one thing I would say, Eve, is one of the bigger problems here is that there's a lot of space here, and I know that you're probably thinking there's probably some microcopy coming in below, but you want to try to keep this on the screen. You always want to try to keep that next button or whatnot on in the view. And if we put this into a mode where we can actually see it as a prototype. So here we are. This is the screen as it stands right now. So we've taken a light amount of information and we've really made it pretty long. So I would consider like maybe bringing this up to the corner, like showing or tightening this up. It's just pretty large at this point in time. It's pretty deep. So there's that. Let's go ahead and escape from here. As we migrate through to the next screen, you can see this is tightened up pretty nicely. You've got your one thing I like about this is you've got pre-selected sizes. So rather than saying what size are you and expecting them to type something in, you've given them a radio button like selector. You've given them pre-filled options. Same thing for meal preference. I like that. And then here, so you're asking them whether they're a member or not. So that gives you a price difference. And it looks like you are intending for your microcopy to stay to the outside, which is fine. That means I would really come in and bring the stuff closer together, because if the microcopy is going out here, you don't need all of this extra space in between. I'll go ahead and reset it here for you because it's your design, but I do want to tighten these things up as much as possible. Also, when we look at the size of these, 18 and 20, those are logical sizes. So that I'm not thinking that you've got a lot to fix there. It's just like all the space given here before the form actually starts on the page. I would have the form start further up, like in this range. And then I would probably I'd probably just move this over here, or find a way to maybe get rid of this. Integrating this together would be the ideal, but it's just a little bit too much space being eaten up at the top without being able to get this. What I'm always scared about is I can't get the previous or next or register or any of that's off the screen. People, as they're filling out, they're like, well, where do I go? It's particularly bad if it's a situation where it cuts off just barely below and you fill it out and you're like, I don't know what to do next. That's one reason why Amazon and many retailers have a submit button typically up here in the corner. Even sites like if you utilize like WordPress, they'll always have a couple of different ways that you can hit submit or save, so the user doesn't get lost in the process. So let's look at part 2 of your design, or your exercise here. And this is the form field selection. And the idea here is that you're creating an account, you're booking a plane ticket, not that anybody does that anymore, you're updating a credit card, and you're going to subscribe to a newsletter. And essentially, you're trying to figure out what fields are necessary. And I've given you a lot of fields right here to work with. And here, when you're setting up a new account, I do think that an email address, a password, and a submit button, that is the minimum viable account setup. I think it's fine. You could say, I need your name. But that's not necessarily needed. You could also say, what's your username? You could put a lot of things into this, but I think this is like the minimum. And think about it. Why do you need an email address? Well, an email address can double as the username, and if they ever forget their password, you can always send it to that email address. So it does a lot of work in just having that one field. The email address is required. You have to have an email address. You have to have a password. So those are all great. Plane ticket, origination, destination, departure date, arrival, quantity, number of seats, and then search. That feels right. That feels right. So update a credit card. First name, last name, credit card number, expiration date, CVC, submit, cancel. I think that's right. Being that you're updating a credit card, you might also need the edit button. So typically, I'm imagining you've arrived at the screen. There's an existing card on file, and you want to update it, which means you need to be able to click update or edit or something to trigger the action to allow you to update the fields. But you've got everything else here. So I think you're good there. And then subscribe to a newsletter. This is kind of similar to account in that you have to have the email address. I don't know what first name, last name really gets you, aside from a way to personalize that email or that newsletter. So typically, if you have a first name, you can take that and shove it into the field, to the form, and it'll say, "Dear Eve." If you don't have that, it would be, "Hey subscribers." You'd have to phrase it differently to make people feel like the newsletter was meant for them. So the asking for the first name allows you to do that. But if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. And actually, in many ways, you're asking them to give you more information than you did just to create an account, because now you're asking for email, first name, last name, and then you hit subscribe. This could be just email subscribe. So just, think about that. It's not necessarily wrong, but the goal here was to request minimal information, and I think that you've gotten pretty close to that. Let's go ahead and go to exercise 3. Looks like you're just getting started here, and that's fine. But overall, on exercise part 2, I think you've selected the right fields. Exercise part 1, I just need the spacing to tighten up, okay? For the reasons that I stated just a little earlier. Let's take a second and hop over to, well, that's me. Let's take a second and hop over to Tegel's page. Here we go. So this is Busy Bus, or City Bus, rather. I wrote a project called Busy Bus for another boot camp, and this is her version of it. What's interesting is if I go out to my desktop, which I know is here, yeah. This is where Tegel's design was yesterday, and I accidentally screenshotted it. I wasn't intending on screenshotting it, but I accidentally screenshotted it. And what's fun here is I actually do like to screenshot things for before-after discussions. I typically am involved in them. Tegel has done this on her own because we have a version of where she was yesterday. And the thing we're particularly looking at is the skewed screens. We're going to look now at where she ended up, and if you view the project, you'll see that the screens are now displayed straight. And I find this to be far more appropriate because I get a sense of what this is really like versus the skewed screen thing where I can't really see what's going on. So overall, Tegel, I really think that this is a dramatic improvement over what you had yesterday, and I noticed that you have also taken the time to update the header and footer of the control bars for the phone, because they were for an older iOS or iPhone 8, and now you've updated them for the 10, which is what your size was always to be to begin with. One second. So anyway, I like this overall. Let's continue going down through here. I like this as well. It's a little pixelated, so I do have some questions about it, but it's I can definitely see it, even if it's a little pixelated. I can see it better than I could at the smaller size yesterday. So that's a definite improvement. And here you've got the screens, and I just gotta say they're so clean. They're so nice. They're just it's just a really nice upgrade, considering from where you were. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is I want to talk about, I want to highlight that, you had an initial version and an update. I almost would suggest coming in and adding a screen that has the initial version, so that we can see, update. I think this might be where you show the before after. And because you have that design, you did that design, you should get credit for that design. That design wasn't as good as this one, but it's not that it wasn't good. It just wasn't. It wasn't 2020. Now you've got a design that feels like 2020. Before you had a design that felt like 2015. And I want to show those things side by side, so you can say, listen, I know how to update my stuff. I can grow, I can change, I can evolve with the style, with the time. So I think that's really solid. yeah, and that's about all that we have for today. So it's a relatively light feedback loop, but that's okay. That's all right. I would hope to see more of you submitting work tomorrow. I'm gonna go work on some. I'm gonna go work on some releasing some content today. Rebecca, I'm gonna see you in a little bit. And otherwise, I hope the rest of you have a great rest of your day, and we'll chat soon. Take care.